some real shit, so I can't sugarcoat it and not a little bit.
I told you, the man will go get his motherfucking ass. Y'all think I just be talking? Y'all think Uncle Charlie don't know what he be talking about? I'm gonna break it down for you.
You ever notice how certain names just light up the internet? Say Charleston White, and the comment sections instantly explode. Say Boosie, and you'll see debates stretching from Baton Rouge to Atlanta.
Still get his C's, he still get his G's. Why y'all let these tell too? That's why he attacked me in the barbershop. But you got the black community clapping.
And then, out of nowhere, T.I steps into the mix. And suddenly, every podcast, every gossip page, every outlet from No Jumper to VladTV is running the story. But here's the thing, this beef isn't just about music. It isn't just about ego. It's about what happens when controversy becomes currency in hip-hop.
Boosie go to jail. Say, well, I'm gonna have me I'm gonna go live all day long when Boosie go to jail.
So let me ask you, what happens when Charleston White's trolling, Boosie's fire, and T.I.'s legacy collide on the biggest platforms in the game? Stick with me, because the answer is crazier than you think.
He just saying that to kiss ass because they watch it. I used to say the same shit, and the judge kept revoking my bond.
Charleston White didn't just come out of nowhere. He built his name by saying the unsayable. Whether it was on YouTube lives, No Jumper interviews, or viral moments clipped up by DJ Akademiks. Love him or hate him, you cannot ignore him. And then you've got Boosie Badazz, a man who's been through federal cases, 10-year rumors, countless battles with the industry, and still stands tall. His story was never just music. It was survival. And finally, T.I, the king of the South, the hustler turned mogul, the Atlanta legend who carved out a spot at the top long before the YouTube era. But when Charleston White started talking reckless, T.I couldn't just sit back. Before I even break it down, let me give you 3 snapshots. Charleston White clowning entire rap legacies on VladTV and The Breakfast Club. Boosie snapping back, daring Charleston to pull up and prove himself. And T.I stepping into the middle, defending family, and dragging Atlanta pride into the conversation. Now, you might think you know how this story ends, but trust me, it doesn't go the way you expect. And the payoff? It tells us more about the state of hip-hop news and gossip culture than any one beef ever could. Let's start with Charleston. Because before you can understand why Boosie and T.I reacted the way they did, you've got to understand his playbook. Charleston doesn't just talk, he weaponizes words. He'll go on No Jumper, or DJ Vlad, say something outrageous about Boosie, King Von, or even legends like T.I, and instantly, it's headline material. Think about it. When he called out rappers for glorifying crime, people hated him. But the same people clipped it, shared it, debated it, and boosted his name into the algorithm. Charleston White is proof that being hated online is sometimes the fastest path to influence. And don't forget those Zoom trolling sessions. Yeah, you know the ones. Classrooms, random lives. He turned it into viral comedy. That same energy is what he carries into hip-hop beef. Unpredictable, unapologetic, and undeniably entertaining. Now, you can't talk about this feud without giving Boosie his flowers. See, a lot of people online know him as the wild quote machine, someone who will go viral on Instagram Lives or give you a headline in a heartbeat. But to understand Boosie's reaction to Charleston White, you've got to understand where Boosie came from. This is a man who faced federal cases, who beat the system when people thought he was done for. Boosie's career was never about industry polish. It was about Baton Rouge survival. So when Charleston White tried to clown him, to Boosie, it wasn't just words. It was disrespect. Here's where things heat up. Charleston White made jokes about Boosie's history, mocked his run-ins with the law, and even brought Lil Boosie's kids into the conversation. That's when Boosie drew the line. Because if you know anything about Boosie, you know 2 things. He protects his family like nothing else. And he's not about to let anybody turn his pain into a punchline. So Boosie fired back. Lives, interviews, appearances, you name it. And the thing is, Boosie doesn't do subtle. He came with full energy. And here's the kicker. The more Boosie responded, the more content the blogs had. DJ Akademiks turned it into clips. VladTV ran the soundbites. Hip-hop outlets had a field day. What should have been a small back and forth turned into rap news headlines across the culture. And let's not forget, Boosie isn't standing alone. You bring up Charleston White mocking him, and instantly, fans remind you, what about Webby? That duo, coming out of Baton Rouge, always carried a kind of authenticity that made them untouchable in the streets. So for Boosie, Charleston White wasn't just attacking him, it felt like an attack on his whole legacy. Now you might be thinking, okay, but Boosie's been through beef before. Why make Charleston White such a big deal? Here's why. Boosie sees Charleston White as an outsider who profits off entertainment news gossip while disrespecting real struggles. For someone like Boosie, who had to fight the courts, the streets, and the industry just to breathe, that's the ultimate slap in the face. And when you add in the fact that Charleston White's words spread like wildfire on No Jumper, The Breakfast Club, and YouTube gossip channels, it wasn't just Boosie versus Charleston anymore. It became Boosie versus an entire ecosystem that eats off controversy. Here's the tragic irony. Every time Boosie speaks up, he feeds the machine that Charleston White thrives on. The more he roasts him, the more the clips circulate. The more he fights back, the more fuel gets added to the fire. And that's where the story takes a twist. Because it's not just about what Boosie says, it's about how platforms like DJ Akademiks, VladTV, and No Jumper clips amplify every single syllable. Boosie versus Charleston wasn't just beef, it was business. When you talk about Southern hip-hop, you can't skip over T.I. He's not just a rapper, he's an Atlanta icon. He's the one who brought trap music to the mainstream, who built a legacy as both an artist and a businessman. So when Charleston White threw his name into the fire, that wasn't just shade, it was a direct shot at Atlanta pride. Charleston White made comments about T.Y.'s family, taking aim at his son and questioning his credibility as a father. For T.I., that crossed a line. You see, T.I. has always been a man who defends his household. Music beef is one thing, but when Charleston brought the family into it, T.I. wasn't about to let that slide. He jumped into interviews, lives, and podcasts, addressing Charleston White directly. Suddenly, the feud wasn't just Boosie versus Charleston White, it was Boosie and T.I. versus Charleston White. Here's what makes it even more interesting. T.I. and Boosie aren't strangers. They've collaborated before, shared stages, and crossed paths in both music and controversy. Atlanta and Baton Rouge might be two very different cities, but in the South, loyalty runs deep. And when Charleston White started dragging Boosie, it wasn't long before T.I. felt like he had to stand up too. Because in the South, disrespect to one often feels like disrespect to all. Once again, the machine kicked in. No Jumper clips spread T.I.'s responses. DJ Akademiks gave commentary, framing it as T.I. versus Charleston White. The Breakfast Club discussed it as a cultural moment, not just gossip. And just like with Boosie, every time T.I. spoke, Charleston White won, because controversy was the fuel that kept his name alive. This is where you start to see the cycle. Charleston White says something wild. Boosie or T.I. respond with fire. Outlets amplify the exchange. Fans take sides in the comments, fueling algorithms. And around it goes. But here's the wild part. Charleston White knows this. He's not just reacting, he's orchestrating. Every time he gets a heavyweight like T.I. to respond, he cements himself deeper into the culture. For T.I., this wasn't about clout. He already had his legacy. This was about defending his name, his son, and Atlanta. And that's why his entry into the feud changed the dynamic. It elevated the drama from being just another Charleston White beef to a full-on cultural conversation. Baton Rouge versus Atlanta, old school respect versus new school trolling, family versus internet games. Remember when I told you Charleston White started out trolling on Zoom? That unpredictable energy? That's exactly what fueled his beef with Boosie and T.I. He took the same formula, say something wild, wait for the reaction, and watch the internet do the rest. And think back to Boosie's federal case, the years when people thought he'd never walk free again. That's why Charleston's jokes cut so deep. Because they weren't just random insults, they were direct jabs at scars Boosie had to live with. And of course, T.I., the Atlanta king, the family man. The moment Charleston White crossed that line and brought his son into it, it was no longer trolling. It was personal. Each callback proves one thing. Charleston White knows exactly which buttons to push. Here's the truth nobody wants to admit. This feud isn't just Charleston White versus Boosie versus T.I. It's Charleston White versus an entire culture that can't look away. Think about it. Every time Boosie rants, DJ Akademiks has a clip. Every time T.I. speaks, No Jumper gets a headline. Every time Charleston White trolls, VladTV gets the views. It's a cycle where outrage equals profit. And Charleston White, he's mastered the game. He turns hate into headlines, headlines into interviews, and interviews into influence. Boosie stands for authenticity. T.I. stands for family and legacy. Charleston White stands for disruption. And when all three collide, what you get isn't just beef. It's a cultural flashpoint that tells us more about the state of hip-hop media than any track ever could. Hip-hop used to be about who had the hardest bars, who dropped the best album, who owned the streets. Now, it's about who dominates the conversation. Charleston White proved that controversy travels faster than music. Boosie proved that authenticity still commands respect. And T.I proved that even legends aren't immune to the pull of internet drama. This is bigger than Baton Rouge or Atlanta. It's about how gossip, reaction culture, and viral trolling have become just as important to the game as beats and rhymes. So now the question is, whose side are you on? Is Charleston White just keeping it real in his own reckless way? Is Boosie the last line of defense for authenticity? Or is T.I the one who really stood tall by defending his family? Drop your take in the comments, because this is one of those debates where every perspective counts. And if you're here for the raw breakdowns, the reactions, the gossip that shapes hip-hop culture, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We cover it all, from Boosie Badazz to Charleston White funny moments, from No Jumper clips to the Breakfast Club debates. Because one thing's for sure, this story, it's far from over.